Hello, welcome back. Today, I'm just going to give a very brief outline of two body systems, the digestive system and the excretory system. So these two systems are very intimately linked, and they are also both closely tied to the circulatory system. Yeah. So I'm going to start off with the digestive system. And as I'm sure you know, the digestive system is responsible for breaking down the food that we eat. We eat some food, it's a big organic molecules are in there, right? They've been built up by other living things, and we want to break those down into their base units so that we can use those molecules instead. Right? So the digestive system is our body system that is responsible for that process. There are two types of digestion. There's mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion is when we are physically breaking down the substances. Right? So we're mushing them, smashing them until they break down into smaller pieces. Obviously, that can only do so much because you need chemical reactions to break down chemicals. But if I got like apple tissue, I could smush up that apple tissue so that it's easier for my chemical processes to get access to the individual molecules that they're going to be manipulating. Right? And so, obviously, the first step to digestion is putting the food into our mouth. Right? And we chew the food, we grind the food down with our teeth. The process of chewing is called mastication. Right? And so that's the main mechanical digestive mechanism that we have. We break down food with our teeth, smush it up. And we also mush it around with our tongue. That's part of digestion as well. That's mechanical in nature, of course. And we fold that food up into like a ball. Right? That ball of food, that mushy ball of food, is called a bolus. As that food is interacting with the spit in our mouth, the saliva in our mouth contains enzymes. Those enzymes, the salivary amylase, start breaking down some of the carbohydrates that are in that food. So we chew it up, chew it up, chew it up, mix it with our spit, start breaking it down. And we swallow it, right? And so we push the food into our esophagus, which is the tube that runs down to our stomach from our mouth. Okay? And our esophagus doesn't just like let the food drop, it pushes the food into our stomach through a series of contractions called peristalsis. Right? So it'll contract up here, push the food down, contract a little lower, push the food down. This process continues the mechanical digestion. It's not nearly as, you know, effective as the mechanical digestion in the mouth, right? But it doesn't hurt to mush it up some more before it gets to the stomach. So now that bolus of wet, mushy food has reached our stomach, and our stomach's main job is chemical digestion. So most of our chemical digestion is occurring within the stomach. There's the stomach acid, which is hydrochloric acid, and there's also some enzymes in there. Primarily, the enzyme that the stomach is using is called pepsin. It's responsible for breaking down proteins. And then there's also some bile in the stomach that has been dumped in there by the liver. The liver makes the bile, and the bile is responsible for the breakdown of lipids. And so that amylase that came down with the spit is still working on the carbohydrates. The pepsin is working on breaking down the proteins, and the bile is working on breaking down the lipids. So now all of our food groups are getting broken down by chemical reactions within our stomach. Once the food has had enough time to digest and break down in the stomach, there's an opening between the stomach and the small intestine. That opens up, that little sphincter opens, and the food passes into the small intestine. Now, a small intestine is a very long tube, and it's lined with more of the villi that we looked at in the respiratory system, right? Those tiny little folds with the capillaries that run through them. It is through this villi that the nutrients can actually pass from the digestive system into the blood so that the food items can get all over our body. So this is happening in the small intestines. The nutrients are moving from the digestive system into the circulatory system to be moved about and used by our body. That food bolus, now that all the goodies have been removed from it, it is waste. It's effectively what we're going to have as feces, right? That moves into our large intestine, which is fatter but shorter. And that large intestine's main job is just to reabsorb a lot of the water that we had put into getting the food wet and digesting it. Right? We don't want to waste that water. We don't want to just poop it all out. We want to keep that water. So our large intestine reabsorbs that water back into our body. Okay? And then we're left over with just the poop, the feces. And so we dump that out through our colon and our anus, and it's gone. Goodbye. Right? And that's the story of digestion. We break down the food into small molecules, and those small molecules move from the digestive system into our blood so that the blood can take it to our cells so that we can, have that good stuff in our cells because our cells want it. So, digestive system, boom. So, as we've already got to the feces elimination part of our story, right, we've already moved into the story of our excretions, the excretory system, the way we get stuff out of our body. Right? And so, feces is how we remove solid waste that was never really taken into our body for the most part. Right? So, a lot of the stuff that was left over that didn't really get digested just came straight out. Went in this end, came out that end. And that's one part of the story. But there are things floating around in our blood that are also waste that have to be getting rid of, right? We have to dump them out. And so our excretory system is responsible for removing those waste items from our body and getting them out into the atmosphere. And so the first organ that we care about for our excretory system is the liver. Right? The liver is a big organ right around here, right about you have like the gap in your rib cage. Your liver is right around there. And your liver, one of its main jobs is breaking down toxins in your blood. So your blood will flow through your liver will filter out the toxins. It has a bunch of enzymes that it can use to break down those toxins, turn them into things that aren't harmful for our body anymore, and then dump them into our intestines and get rid of that stuff. Right? And so our liver is breaking down a lot of those toxins. Like your liver is responsible for breaking down alcohol. When you consume alcohol, it's one of those things, right? And it turns it into a different molecule that gives you a headache in the morning. Right? But it's not poisonous anymore because alcohol is poisonous. So that's why we don't put it in our body. Okay? Livers breaking down those toxins and wastes. The kidneys are also filtering our blood for waste, but they're filtering it very specifically for protein waste. So when our body's done with the proteins start falling apart, and we need to get that waste stuff out, right? And so our kidneys filter our blood and take out all that trash protein stuff, right? And then dump it into our bladder in the form of uric acid, and you mix that with water, and it becomes urine, and then we can pee that out. Right? So our kidneys are what makes the pee, and that pee is basically nitrogenous waste, the leftover trash from protein stuff. And the last thing that we usually don't think about as part of our excretory system that we really need to consider is our skin. And so the pores in our skin allow us to dump certain things out that are trash, right? Like we have a lot of salts that are left over that we can excrete through our skin. There are some small toxins that you can secrete through your skins, right? If you eat too much meat and you have meat build up, you can secrete that through your skin, right? It comes out your pores and makes you greasy, right? So our skin is also part of our excretory system. Okay, liver, kidney, skin. Couple of quick diagrams. Where'd my digestive system diagram go? There it is. All right, so here's the shape of our digestive system. Obviously starts in the mouth, chew, 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 swallow that bolus, drop, 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 drops into our stomach, right, which is higher than you think, right? Your stomach's like up out here. Okay, so usually when you say your stomach hurts, what you're actually saying is your intestines hurt. Right? When you have a stomach ache, it's usually your intestines that are hurting you. Right? And so the stomach is chemically digesting these food, gets digested, boom, drops into this small intestine here, spends a lot of time in the small intestine. Right? The longer it spends in the small intestine, the more nutrients we can get out of it. So that's why the small intestine is very long. Once it reaches the end of the small intestine and moves into our large intestine, which actually circles back up and around like this, again absorbing water out of that waste, and then finally it's eliminated as feces. Okay? So that's the flow of our digestive system. Your liver is right about here too, just as a reference point for where it is. Okay? And then for the excretory system, I just diagrammed the kidneys. And so the kidneys, right, the term for kidneys that we use to refer to kidney stuff is renal, right? So RENAL, anytime you see this word, it's talking about kidneys. So you have the renal arteries and the renal veins. This brings the blood through the kidneys. Okay, so you have two kidneys. They're below your rib cage and your back, right? So if you feel where your rib cage ends in your back, that's right about where your kidneys are. Okay? You got two of them. They're highly folded inside, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of folds. And that allows for the absorption of those protein wastes. Right? And then they dump down through these tubes into the bladder, which ultimately is attached to your urethra, and that's where you pee out the urine, right? Pee, pee, pee. And so a lot of people think that we pee to get rid of water, but that's not at all true. We don't want to get rid of that water. We want that water. Right? We need to use that water to pee out the protein waste. Right? And so that's just wasted water that we could have saved if we didn't need to pee out that waste. And yeah, that's it. Those are the two systems. So, ta-da! I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I will see you next time. Bye.